My name is Isa. I'm 32 years old. 2 months ago, on the night of my parents' 35th wedding anniversary, in front of 50 relatives and friends, my mother pressed a crumpled $2 lottery ticket into my palm, while my sister Beatrice still clutched the check for $25,000 they'd handed her for a first-class cruise. My mother's voice carried across the room, bright and firm. "This is all that's appropriate for your situation, Isa," she said. Everyone laughed. Every single one of them. They had no idea that tiny slip of paper was about to change everything. $150 million changes everything, but not in the way you might think. Before I tell you how I dismantled their world, let me take you back to that night. The night the Crawford family's carefully staged performance finally gave way beneath them. I retreated to the kitchen. The heavy oak door muffled Beatrice's high-pitched giggling, and Julian's booming, performative laugh, the kind I had heard all my life, never aimed at anything genuinely funny. The kitchen smelled of burnt rosemary and the faint antiseptic scent of the wipes I always carry. Grandma Grace was sitting alone in the small breakfast nook, away from the 50 guests celebrating in the next room. She looked small, shrunken, her eyes fixed on a spot on the wall, hands resting limp in her lap, as though someone had set her there and walked away. "Hey, Grandma," I whispered, kneeling beside her. She didn't blink. My chest tightened with a familiar ache, the one that had lived behind my ribs most of my life. I knew it well, the ache of being the one who noticed. While Beatrice flaunted her influencer brunch photos, while our parents quietly siphoned Grandma's savings to fund her followers and her wardrobe, I was the one working double shifts in the pediatric unit. I was the one who, 3 years ago, had handed over $18,000 of my own savings to clear back taxes on this very house when my parents claimed they were short on cash. Later, I found out they weren't short. They'd decided Beatrice's old car was embarrassing and bought her a new one instead. My sacrifice had funded her vanity, and they never told me, assuming I would never notice. I was the too independent child, the one they could ignore without guilt. But here's what they never understood about nurses. We are trained to read the body's quiet emergencies, the ones no one else sees coming. I looked at Grandma Grace and felt my clinical mind click over the ache in my chest. Her skin was cold, like parchment. Her pulse was thready and uneven. Her pupils were pinpoints, her breathing shallow. This wasn't age. This wasn't fatigue. I had seen this before. "Just a second, Grandma. I've got you," I said softly. I pulled out a clean specimen cup and diagnostic swabs from my bag. I worked quickly and quietly while 50 people clinked their champagne glasses 20 feet away. My gut told me what I was dealing with. I needed confirmation. I walked back into the living room wearing the same invisible daughter mask I had worn for 3 decades. My parents were fumbling with iPads, trying to set up a photo-sharing app for the cruise. "I can help with that," I said. Julian, Beatrice's husband, the man my parents worshipped as a financial genius, handed me his phone with a condescending pat. "Thanks, Isa. At least the nursing degree taught you to follow instructions, right?" he said, turning back to his drink. My mother laughed. I had exactly 2 minutes. I didn't just set up the app. I navigated to the settings, enabled location sharing to a number he didn't recognize, and mirrored his message backups to a private cloud account. Trauma nursing prepares you for this, doing critical work in the margins of chaos. A message notification flashed across the screen from a contact named Vinny. "The deed is recorded. The shark gets the house if the first installment isn't in my hand by the 15th. Make sure the old lady stays quiet." My blood ran cold. I finished the setup and handed the phone back with a polite smile. I said goodnight to the room, walked to my car, and sat in the dark with the $2 ticket in my lap. I want to be honest. I didn't feel powerful. I felt sick, genuinely sick. They had been drugging her, using Grandma's post-surgery medication to keep her compliant, while Julian guided her hand to sign the house over as collateral for his debts. The woman who braided my hair, who taught me to bake, was barely conscious while her family toasted 20 feet away. I looked at the lottery ticket. I opened the app. I scanned the numbers. 1, 2, 3, all 6 matched. I didn't scream. I didn't breathe. A strange stillness fell over me, The same stillness in the middle of a resuscitation when everything slows and your hands just know what to do. $150 million. I sat in the dark until my phone screen timed out. Then I drove to Grandma's house, the one no longer legally hers, and slept on her couch so she wouldn't be alone. The next morning, I went to see Thomas Smith. Thomas had been my grandfather's oldest friend. He still wore pocket squares, remembered the names of children from years ago, and had spent 40 years practicing law with a moral code so solid you could build a house on it. He had watched me grow up, had watched what my family did to me. He had never once said, "I told you so." I laid the drug test results from Grandma's sample on his desk, next to the screenshots from Julian's phone. "They sedated her," I said. "They used benzodiazepines to keep her incoherent, while Julian recorded a deed of trust against the house. He's using it as collateral with a loan shark named Vinny." Thomas was quiet for a long moment. He read everything slowly, carefully, without rushing. Then he set the documents down. "This is elder abuse and grand larceny," he said. "Isa, if we go to the police today, Julian may panic and move assets offshore. He has ties we'd have trouble tracing quickly." "I know," I said. "I don't want him to panic. I want him to get on that ship." Thomas looked at me, then gave a slow, steady nod. "Then we don't sue yet. We file a lis pendens, a notice of pending litigation against the property. It doesn't take the house back today, but it freezes the title completely. Julian can't sell it. Vinny can't seize it. The house becomes legally untouchable until the case is resolved." "Do it," I said. Over the next 3 days, I watched them pack through the synced photos on Julian's cloud. Beatrice posted a picture of her designer luggage with the caption, "Finally leaving the stress behind. Blessed." I stared at it for a while, then closed the app and went back to work. They were walking onto a ship they thought was their reward. They had no idea it was a cage. On the third day of the cruise, Julian's credit and debit cards were declined at the blackjack table. The dealer shook her head quietly. I had filed a fraud affidavit the morning the ship entered international waters. The credit line was frozen. The account was under investigation. They were stranded on a 5-star liner, without access to a single dollar, unable to buy water, unable to pay gratuities, unable to explain to each other exactly how this was happening. That was when I called. I sat in Grandma Grace's favorite armchair, the one Beatrice used to call that smelly old thing. The house around me was quiet. The grandfather clock ticked. Grandma was asleep in the next room. When the call connected, their faces filled my screen. They were crowded in a corner of the ship's lounge, disheveled, panicked, nothing like the triumphant family who had laughed at me 6 days ago. Beatrice's mascara had streaked down her cheeks. My mother gripped her pearl necklace so tightly, I thought the strand would break. "Isa, thank God. The cards aren't working. It's some kind of glitch," my mother said, her voice cracking. Julian added, "It's a technical error. We need you to wire $10,000 to the purser right now. We are being humiliated." I let the silence sit for a moment. "It's not a glitch, Mom." Julian's face turned red, furious. "Don't play games, Isa. I know you're jealous, but what you're doing is illegal. You are interfering with a private financial arrangement." "Julian," I said, my voice dropping into the tone I use for the most difficult ICU conversations, calm, clear, impossible to misread. "What's illegal is sedating a 90-year-old woman to forge her signature on a deed of trust." I shared my screen. The first image was the lab report, toxic benzodiazepine levels in Grandma's blood drawn the night of the party. The second was Julian's location history, placing him at a motel in the city on 17 separate occasions over 4 months during the same dates. Beatrice thought he was at business conferences. The third was the lis pendens filing. Beatrice made a sound I have never heard from a human being before or since. Julian's eyes went to the floor. "The house is locked," I said. "The bank has opened a criminal fraud investigation into the $25,000. I continued. "Thomas Smith is at the district attorney's office right now, and I won $150 million on that ticket you gave me, Mom." I watched the color drain from her face, the way it leaves a patient's face when the news is the worst kind. She shrank inside herself. The performance dissolved, leaving a frightened old woman who had made catastrophic choices. "I'm not spending a single dollar to save you," I said quietly. "I'm using it to make sure you never set foot in this house again." I didn't wait for a response. I ended the call and set the phone face down on the armchair's arm. For the first time in 32 years, the room was completely peaceful. The ship docked 3 days later. There were no private cars waiting for them. 2 officers from the Port Authority and a process server Thomas had arranged were there. I watched the footage from my new apartment. I had changed the locks and installed cameras before they boarded. As Beatrice pounded on the front door of a house she no longer had any claim to, calling my name with a voice stripped of cruelty and shrunk to something rare and small, Julian stood at the curb, head in his hands. I turned off the feed and made tea. A week later, my mother called from a number I didn't recognize. Her voice was thick and wet. "Isa, please. Julian misled us. We didn't know how bad it was. We are your parents. We're sleeping in a motel. It's cold, and Beatrice is struggling so badly. Please, just talk to us. I want to be honest." The old instinct flickered, the one that had spent 32 years trying to fix things, trying to earn my place, trying to believe that if I gave enough, they would see me. I almost believed her. I hated myself for almost believing her, because that instinct had been exploited my entire life. I agreed to meet them for coffee to hear them out. When I arrived at the diner, they weren't alone. They had a lawyer with them, a sharp-eyed man smelling of desperation and contingency fees. They slid a document across the table before I had even sat down properly. "For tax protection," my father said, trying to project authority into a voice that had lost its footing, "you need to manage this money properly. Isa, sign this. We'll drop any claims to the lottery, and we can find a way to be a family again." I picked up the document. It was not a trust. It was a total power of attorney. Every asset, every account signed over to them. They hadn't come to apologize, they had come to make one last play. They still thought I was the spare. I set the document down. I took a folder from my bag and placed it in front of Julian. "I have a counteroffer." It was a structured settlement agreement prepared by Thomas. I explained I was placing $10 million into a managed fund for their living expenses, to be administered by Julian as the managing partner. Julian's eyes lit up. He reached for the pen before I had finished speaking. The moment the ink dried, I stood up. "Julian, that trust is now legally attached to your personal social security number. And because you just commingled those funds with the assets you stole from Grandma Grace, the IRS has full jurisdiction over every account connected to your name. I didn't buy your debt, Julian. I reported it. Thomas and I have been working with the IRS whistleblower office for 3 weeks. They were waiting for you to sign a document, voluntarily claiming ownership of those assets. I hope you look good in orange." I walked out of the diner without looking back. 10 minutes later, Julian was in handcuffs on the sidewalk. Beatrice stood beside the seized designer handbag that had cost more than most people's monthly rent, watching the life she had built on her mother's cruelty and her husband's fraud collapse around her feet. My phone showed 79 missed calls before I blocked the number. I felt the weight lift off my shoulders so completely, it was almost physical, like setting down a bag I'd carried so long I'd forgotten I was holding it. The aftermath was thorough. Julian was sentenced to 9 years in federal prison for money laundering, tax evasion, and elder exploitation. He was ordered to pay $342,000 in restitution. Every asset he had used to perform wealth, the watches, the leased car, the offshore accounts, was seized. Beatrice's fall was faster and more public. The influencer who had lived for approval became a pariah overnight. 300,000 followers vanished in 48 hours. Brand deals were canceled before the ship had even docked. She found work at a dry cleaner. Last I heard, she was doing fine, quietly. I hold no anger for her anymore, just distance. 3 months later, a letter arrived at my new address. My mother's handwriting on cheap notebook paper. "Isa, I am still your mother. We are old and your father's back is failing. You have millions of dollars. How can you sleep at night knowing we are struggling? Please, for the sake of family, forgive us." I read it twice. I waited for the guilt, the old familiar tug. It didn't come. I walked to the kitchen, fed it through the shredder, and watched it become confetti. The silence in my house was not lonely. It was the most peaceful silence I had ever known. My family looks different now. Thomas comes by every Sunday with a fresh loaf of sourdough bread and stories about my grandfather that make me feel connected to something solid and good. My colleagues from the unit come for dinner on Thursdays. They know my name, respect my hands in judgment, make me laugh until my sides ache. And I have Grandma Grace. This afternoon, we sat in her garden, the one I used to weed as a teenager, while Beatrice took selfies on the porch. Grandma's mind is sharp again. Her laugh is loud. She held my hand and told me, I always knew you were the strong one, Isa. I just couldn't say it loud enough. I am sitting on the porch now, watching the sun move down through the trees, and I want to speak to you directly. Blood does not make you family. Loyalty does. Love does. Showing up does. You are allowed to walk away from people who hurt you, even if you share their last name. There is no moral obligation to remain a target simply because they are written into your DNA. They mocked my life as a nurse. They thought it was small. They thought I was small. They forgot what nurses actually are. People who have learned to sit in crisis without flinching, to watch and wait, to act with precision while everyone around them panics, to find the quiet emergency no one else notices, and handle it with steady hands. My superpower was never the money. The money was just a tool. My superpower was patience and the knowledge that some debts, the ones written in cruelty, in silence, in years of being invisible, collect interest. I am Isa Crawford. I am 33 years old. I am finally, completely, irreversibly free.